Oh, hello! Welcome to Badgerpod Nerdcast, number 43, Halt and Catch Fire Revisited. I am the host, Brian Martinez, and I'm joined by, basically a bunch of really cool people who I adore. And let me go ahead and introduce them really quick so that we can get right into the meat and potatoes of the show. We have Allison Timon. Arasan Taiman, Anna Chere, and Anthony, or Hyper
Hello?
Chicken. Say hello.
Yes, Anthony is a patron. He's actually somebody who makes the show possible. Well, I mean, I guess we all make the show possible, but he also makes the show possible by being our patron. So, thanks, Anthony. Oh, shoot! Damn it, Hyper Chicken. Oh my God.
Thanks for joining us. And Anthony is not enough information.
Okay.
It's on his icon, so he can't really avoid that.
All right.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah, and Moke Stephenson.
It's Dr. Montgomery to you.
Oh my fucking God! It just gets worse. Could you say that again?
Also
known
known
how
as
you pronounce it in Japanese. It'd be something like Dr. Randomaru Kamagagari.
Yes. Dr. Randomukamu. Something like that. And then there's a silent badger who will not be revealed. He will just sit there and watch and stare into your soul.
He's a mute, so we can't.
Yeah, he's a mute, but he's very opinionated, so we brought him on the show.
He'll just
very
beam
French.
his opinions into everybody's heads
Yes.
through his silent, judgmental eyes.
Okay, so, before we get into the main topic, thanks everybody for coming on, and thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We're going to look at the mailbag briefly, and I'm going to hand...
Didn't we forget Anna Cherry?
No, I said Anna Cherry. She was second.
She's still muted.
Oh, I see.
She muted herself, but she's polite.
Okay,
Anna, you
so
want to say hi?
I'm sweet like that. Hi.
See, she's here. She heard.
Okay.
She just didn't talk over me like everybody else did.
No, it's true. Yes, the mailbag. Let's do the bagging. All right. Before I begin the mailbag, if you are interested in sending a topic for the nerd, what the hell is this? Nerdpod. Send it to topic@badgerpod.com, and we will read it if you put paragraphs in. Incidentally, there was one person who sent me an email for this show who didn't put paragraphs in, but I put paragraphs in for you only because I've watched the show that you referenced. If you had sent me something that I hadn't referenced, I wouldn't put the paragraphs in. So don't forget your paragraphs, people. Meaning, once again, that email is topic@badgerpod.com. JDM. Stuff men never told you about. How stuff works. YouTube channel. What is right? This one is bad, but you should check out some of her other videos. Open letter to Amy Schumer. Interesting excerpts. Women are very simply the ultimate moral base in our battles for peace and justice throughout the world. All our base bar belong to you, apparently. Be a voice for our generation and for women, two groups who make up the most of the victims of the gun violence in our country. Wait. Actually, you know what? I just made a mistake. That is the wrong... This is actually the show. This should go on the radio show, not the Nerd Pod. But do you guys want to take that up anyway? How stuff works?
I think I did a response to her back in January. It was...
Isn't that
good.
Lee Doran's old channel? How stuff works?
Lee Dorn?
Or am I thinking...
Wait, is that Dirty Jobs? Oh, maybe. I don't know.
It's a really awesome show. It it shows you how stuff is made, literally, like piping.
It's actually a cool show.
Yeah.
It's
okay, I'm thinking of something different then.
All right. Okay. So the next item is the one that I didn't get paragraphs, so almost wasn't read. Beat has made an inquiry. Hello, Badgers. I noticed recently on my Tumblr dash some of the anime blogs I was following were posting scenes from this new anime called Shimoneta, a boring world, where the concept of dirty jokes doesn't exist, and the premise of the series seems to be right up your alley, as it were. Shimoneta takes place in the not-so-distant future, wherein the country of Japan has banned and censored all reference to sexuality. Citizens wear collars that monitored their speech, and all forms of sexual media, from porn to softcore pinups, are burned. So much as saying the word dick can get you arrested by the moral authorities. The story focuses on the son of a so-called dirty joke terrorist, who wants to pursue his childhood friend, who happens to be the daughter of the man who brought the high morality laws into Japan. Anna, who's the daughter of the guy who brought the high morality laws into Japan, works hard to enforce a high standard of morality in her school and against all things dirty. However, it seems she has absolutely no knowledge of her own sexuality, leaving her incredibly repressed, and when she's turned on, she tends to act out in extreme ways. Then there's Ayami Kojo, another student at the main character's school, who leads a double life as the perverted terrorist Blue Snow. As Blue Snow, she strips down to her birthday suit, dons panties over her face, and runs around the city in a cape, screaming obscenities and scattering pamphlets depicting sexual material.
I could totally cosplay that.
I've yet to see the whole series myself, and I believe it's ongoing. Okay. Actually, I have watched the first episode.
So have I.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, we should probably do some more on that because it's pretty funny, and it's also, I guess, a commentary on.
Topical.
It's topical. So look, it's likely that we will do a show on it. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
It's top-lessical.
It's tested topical. I don't even fucking.
It's testicles.
That's not even innuendo. That's just plain
bollocks.
Yeah, just hanging it right out there. It's just like, yeah, plop. There they are.
Yep.
Okay. Hello, honey.
Move on to the next mailbag.
Hello, honey badgers. I wanted to know if you've ever seen Season 8, Episode 14 of Family Guy. In the episode, Peter, the main character's boss, sexually harasses him and threatens to fire him. When he tells his wife, she gets impatient and insists that men can't be sexually harassed by women. Just thought it would be interesting if you thought that the episode was pointing out a flaw with society or reinforcing it. Thanks, always, Sparky. I don't really recall that particular episode, so I can't really comment on it. Does anybody else recall that episode and have a comment to make?
Vaguely. When it comes to the Seth MacFarlane machine, I think they just pick up any sort of plot they can sort of find anyone else doing and think, aha, we can use that in one of the 3 shows we have to do every week. You know what I mean?
And combined with the fact that I think we both just summed up how to remember most of Seth MacFarlane's work is slightly vaguely. It sort of bleeds together after a while.
Well, there's so much of it, you know, and it's not to say it's not, you know, they managed to do a pretty good job of weaving a plot together 3 times a week, you know, on those rare weeks where they do all 3 shows.
Yeah.
But, they've definitely. I can't say that they stick with one or the other. They've gotten like against weed and drugs, and they've done a pro weed, and it's just one example. So they might have been pro it because it's just a hot topic or something that works.
It might be a mistake to think that Seth MacFarlane shows have an overarching thesis or political bent, and they're just going for the funny wherever they can find it.
Yep. It's a mixed bag.
So it might just be a good episode to look at if you really want to.
Yeah, well, we can definitely put that on the back burner. Well, let's get started with the show. What do you think, Brian?
Already? Oh, yeah, let's do it.
Let's dive right in.
I was expecting another letter, but no. All right, let's get right into the topic. So we're talking about. I'm gonna sum it up really briefly. We're talking about *Halt and Catch Fire*, which was.
Do you want me to do it?
What?
You want me to do it?
Yeah, go ahead and sum it up. But I mean, I think of it as a character study.
It's a character study. Yeah. It's a story that took place. The first original season took place in 1983, and it's about a supposedly sociopathic visionary named Joe McMillan, a meek, mild-mannered, supposedly geeky engineer named Gordon Clark, and a pock-runk hacker programmer prodigy named Cameron. And together they create sort of an almost ran like a PC or IBM PC clone over the first season, and it's just them basically their interactions as characters, and they're quite interesting and intense as they attempt to create this machine under the gun, because Joe in the first episode does some machinations to force a small software company in the Silicon Prairie in Dallas to create this PC by using the might of IBM as leverage. And I'm not going to give you any details. It's pretty intense. But yeah, that's the first season. And the first season worked really well. It was very tense. It had a ticking time clock. They were always running up against lack of funding. Initially they were running away from IBM's lawyers and creating this PC clone. And then they were running up against having to get it ready for Comdex, and so there was a lot of tension in terms of time. So that gave the entire show a certain tightness that I think the second season completely and utterly lacks. And ultimately, what I think the draw was for the first season, was that moment when the four characters, and we should include Clark's wife Donna, who's also an engineer, and offered up some of the innovative suggestions that made the Cardiff's piece IBM clone work. The draw for the entire first season is the moment when those four very, very different and almost always at odds characters set aside their differences and actually function as a team. And it's glorious. It's like a combination of The Breakfast Club and Real Genius. And that's the best moments of the second season, the first season, aside from the times where Joe and Gordon are working together, which are some really great sequences. And we also find out that time is probably one of the happiest times in Joe's life. And then the next season takes off. At the end of the first season, Cameron's innovative operating system has to be taken out to make sure the giant cells in order to save Cardiff and Gordon. And she basically, at this point, she's had a relationship with Joe, and she basically kicks him to the curb and hates his guts because he was forced to take her OS out of the giant to make sure it sold. And the beginning of the next season follows her company Mutiny as she and, for some strange and completely inexplicable reason, Donna try to make a go of it as two women entrepreneurs in Texas. In actually probably the most promising and opportune time for a woman to make her way in tech in the mid-'80s, since that's when most women were in tech. About 40% of the people in tech were women in the 80s. Now it's down to 12%, probably thank you to feminists, but anyway. So that's the story. That's the second season, and unfortunately, Joe and Gordon, and I think the show suffers for it, are sidelined in the second season. And Gordon's dealing with some mental brain damage and mental issues, and Joe is dealing with the fact that he's basically a leper when it comes to business now. Oh yeah, I should mention that he burnt an entire shipload of the Cardiff Giant out of some sort of pain over what had happened during the creation of it. And he's also implicated in flooding out the data center at IBM. So he's seen as a very destructive person. And he's in the second season. He has to deal with the fact that sort of follows him everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Is that a good enough summary? It's not really concise, but.
Yeah, no, I think that pretty much says the bulk of like what happens for the most part.
Everything else is going to follow in the next period of time of crazy, angry screaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we want to let Hyper Chicken do the reading?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Hyper Chicken, because we're now talking about the season 2 has concluded yesterday with the finale, and so Hyper Chicken has some commentary on the entirety of the first arc of the second season. Since we talked about the first season before the second season started, like 2 months ago. So
I should have said this before, but spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. Yeah, totally. Like, we are going to destroy the show for you. So
yeah,
watch. You know, you are warned. Go ahead. Go for it.
Okay. I wrote this. It's called "What Was Wrong with HACF Season 2 Second Season Syndrome." Now, there's a persistent problem with seasonal television shows that can be termed second season syndrome. When people hear the term pilot in reference to television shows, they think of the first episode. In reality, if you have a show that it's a multi-season show with persistent growing characters and an overarching theme, the pilot is the first season. That's when the characters' personalities, their interactive friction that creates the emotional energy that drives the plot, the environment and societal hazards they interact with, and the private goals of each character are established, and it must be either accommodated or directly resisted for the rest of the show's existence. Which means the second season is where the characters are often confronted, the creators rather, are often confronted with a serious challenge. They've told their original story, build-up story, established the main personality traits, brought a satisfying ending to the season without making further stories too difficult, but now they need a new direction to take the show without actually making a new, if similar, show. Which is why this season of a multi-season show feels like the clunkiest in just about every show. You go through any show with multiple seasons, the second one's the clunky one. The contained story of the first season has ended, and the show is trying to find a long-term theme and plot. The causes of the main mistakes, show creators, there's 4 main mistakes, and one is firstly trying to figure out what made the first season good. We've already talked about what was good. Alison's already mentioned what was great about the first season. The second one is learning to listen to and ignore critics. Critics try and tell them what they should focus on, what they ignore. 3 is trying to take advice from the magic morons we call fans. And 4 is aborting and retaining important story arcs. The ultimate failings of this season of television is that the first one they completely ignored. They have no idea, or seemingly no idea, why this show was good based on this season. Second and third one they focused entirely on almost, and the fourth one they don't know what to do with. The main joy of the show has already been mentioned by Alison, the great way that they just came together at the end, and the way that the great interactions, the great character study, and the way it all just came together and they all made it work. And this season has little to nothing of it. One character relationship is anything other than nauseating unpleasantness for this entire season. And that relationship, Joe and Gordon, is barely in this season. And this season only comes alive in the brief moments they work together, talk together, commiserate with each other, or even just do something to drive the plot. And as for the rest of the time, I don't know if we've already mentioned this, but the show creator Christopher Cantwell emphasized in interview and panel he was tired of telling white male stories and wanted to focus on the 2 prominent women on the show, Donna, Gordon's wife, and Cameron, who is the Gul Dukat of 80s tech. And therein lies the first major problem of this season. These characters provide no emotional impetus of any kind, just none. They're bitching and narking at each other about the focus of the company in the first episode. They're still doing it in the 7th and 8th episode. It's a relationship that always follows the same non-progressing pattern. One of them says or does something that pisses the other one off. They get into a passive-aggressive fight. Cameron decides it's Donna's fault and berates her until Donna apologizes, and then runs off to try and make it right by getting help. None of this show actually moves until one of the penis people nearby moves it. The business of the show, the actual business it's focused around, we've already mentioned, is Mutiny Games. It's managed an almost impossible combo of being barely interesting and utterly horrifying. It's an unstructured, cultish mess, yes, but the horror comes when the viewer realizes the slave mentality that Cameron's cultivated there. Everyone apart from John Bosworth and possibly Tom Rendon, one of the new characters, acts out of total fear towards Cameron, even Donna. Even worse, when the money dries up, which is blamed on the Trojan that accidentally created by Gordon, but actually probably due to the fact that Gordon and Donna can no longer pay the bills, the staff are paid in shares. Except in the 7th episode, it's revealed that Cameron owns a whopping 90% of the company, despite Donna and Gordon paying the lion's share of the money, and the programmers doing so much of the work. In addition, the prize of the company is Donna's community idea, an idea she doesn't even own, and she doesn't even own a tenth of the company that does. Revealing Cameron to be no rebel leader of a team of pure creation that she ensouled Donna and the programmers on. She's a bully, a con artist, a thief, and a tyrant. And the focus of the show, which the critics have tried to sell you this season like it cures cancer and will teleport sex workers in your living room if you just please watch it. The balance of listening to critics and ignoring them is complicated heavily by a simple reading of the reviews of the first season. Virtually all of them are not only ridiculous, but actually reveal that most of the time the critic in question didn't even watch the episode all the way through, or at least didn't remember enough to tell anyone accurate things about the show, which can be explicable. When you have volumes of shows that you watch for your job, it's easy to get it mushed together and sort of forget things. It's quite common to have critics watch critic packages where the reviewer in question only sees a cut-down package of key moments and misses the links that connect them. But with this show, the correct amount of reviews to read for determining what is good about the show ends up being none of them, at least the professional ones. The ones that listen to, the reviewers spend the whole time raving about Donna and Cameron. The fact that Donna was pretty interesting but hardly much to focus on, at least in the first season, and Cameron is one of the worst bullying sociopaths ever to appear in a television show without any of the badassery that can make a villain fun. It's just one piece of nauseating horribleness after another. As for the fans, most of the vocal fans of the first season are Tumblr fans, and it says about as much as can be said about them, that they're Tumblr fans. And story arcs? The problem that should have been noticed when the first episode to have its title spoiled was the last episode, Heaven is a Place. A lot of people might think of the song Heaven is a Place on Earth by Belinda Carlisle, but the accurate song was the song by Talking Heads, the song Heaven. And the lyric of the song sums up the show-destroying problem this season, is that heaven is a place where nothing ever happens. By the end of the season, the show was curled backwards and inserted its head up its own arse. Because at this point, Gordon is broke, stuck in a job he doesn't want, and a marriage with someone who resents him. Donna is back to being a passive-aggressive, lying, controlling hypocrite. And everyone's surprised that Gordon has trust issues. Joe is back to being a loner with his own issues with opening up or even with associating with anyone in a friendly way. And Cameron was always a shitty nightmare of a character, so we'll let that one pass. And I choose to omit the 3 new characters from memory entirely for the same reason. They proved to be no characters at all, just tropes to drive the big 4 all the way back to the start. Sarah Wheeler ended up being nothing. Jacob Wheeler, a pointless, nonsensical villain in the end. Just nonsensical. And Tom Rendon, boring, characterless, and lucky to escape intact. Farewell and don't call. The only difference now is that no longer in Texas, they've moved to San Francisco to do it all again. And that's what I found repellent about this season in the end. It not only didn't progress anywhere, it curled these characters back in on themselves and retroactively hurt the stellar first season. There's making a crappy second season, then there's making a second season so crappy it actually hurts one of the best first seasons ever. Following that season up was always going to be tricky, but this takes a special kind of destructive lunacy. If this show is renewed, it will be a miracle. Maybe they want to see what negative ratings look like. And that's it.
Tell us what we really think. Oh my god, I had a few laugh out loud moments there. I'm actually going to take a contrary position to yours. I don't. Yeah, no. I think that the whole arc of the first season, like I said before in other conversations, I can't tell if the show creators are genius or mad, or completely, or so stupid that they essentially threw themselves at the ground and missed. There is some indication that this might be a subtle form of genius. This is not necessarily something that they're doing for entertainment value, but something deeper. And I know this is a bizarre conspiracy, but I will advance it. And the reason why I'm suggesting this is there is a certain amount of self-awareness that the show creators are betraying in their creation. I mean, you notice how Gordon and Donna have arguments over Joe that reflect the arguments that people have over Joe in the audience, like the fans of the show are having these exact same arguments that they're having. And
that's very nice, isn't it?
Yeah, you pick up on stuff like that, and it's like it seems like there's some self-awareness, some meta going on here. And I think there has to be something to be said for, okay, in the second season there's this this venture capitalist guy. He represents a firm called Stokes Capital.
Yep, that's the one.
He is possibly the most asshole-ish character in the entire season. And the reason why I say that is because he apparently delights in fucking with people, because he was on the fence about mutiny, yet he sort of dangled the possibility of them getting funds, and then he sort of fucked around with them. That's what I think he was doing. He was just mocking them when he brought Donna and Cameron in to talk about giving them funds. He was just toying with them, and I think that, and the reason why I think that is because he did the same to Joe. He brought them in with no, absolutely zero likelihood that he would ever give Joe money, just to humiliate him, What the Stokes Capital guys did is he said, I just wanted to see a sociopath in real life, a psychopath in
That
real
may,
life.
that
It
may
was
be a better motivation than fucking with him. He may have been morbidly curious about Joe.
well,
Not Joe.
but it was an incredibly asshole-ish
Yeah.
thing to do, to bring someone in to dangle the possibility of giving them money just to mock them.
Not to
Yeah,
And
mention,
it is
he
true.
made Joe wait 3 hours and then says, "Oh, I just wanted to see how long you'd wait." So he's
yeah,
being
he's an asshole. Like he's
Yeah.
he's the other characters, the other business characters, even Jacob has an intelligent and relatable motive for what he does. He offered Mutiny a great buyout option. Oh, and incidentally, for those who are tuning in, a lot of the tension in the second season was Joe's father-in-law, Jacob, is a billionaire who offered a buyout option to Mutiny, which was controlled by Cameron and Donna. And
Which took way too long to arrive.
yeah, it took way too long to arrive, the tension. But Jacob, even though he's presented as a villain, he still has, sensibility to his actions. He doesn't do things to excess. And he also has sort of a noble demon quality, as he just quietly accepts his scapegoating at the end with a wry grin. But this Stokes Capital guy is a complete fucking asshole. Like there's he's a prick. And it's interesting that they have the prick tell Joe that he's a sociopath. Because that moment, I really felt for Joe. It was like, wow. And then when Joe got his back on that guy, it was like, yes.
Great sales pitch.
Yeah, it was a great sales pitch. But yeah, essentially, but that's what I'm talking about. There's a meta there. There's a self-awareness there, where they're putting what the fans of the show think about Joe as a character. They're putting the arguments into the show itself, and that's what makes me wonder if this is more than just TV show. If it's more like they're doing some crazy social experiment, in which, if you actually look at the show, like we do a lot of questioning of gender norms and how we look at men and women. So we can, I think us collectively, we can sort of see through the fact that we like agency sink men, and we make them responsible for things over and above what they should be considered responsible, in order to maintain this idea that women aren't really moral agents. They just have things done to them, and you can see that happening with Joe and Cameron. People will inflate Joe's sociopathy in order to make Cameron more acceptable as a character by comparison, or to explain her actions towards Joe as not really being the actions of a sociopath, but just a woman who's reacting to the bad actions of a man. And
Go ahead. Oh no, you go. I was going to say.
If you can see through that, if you can see through that lens, that tendency to remove moral agency from women and push it on men, this story reads completely differently than what the media, the press, and the feminists who are talking about are saying about it, are raving about it. Because once you see it through that lens, to me, it reads like these guys watched my video, Women in Groups, Warlords Are Wonderful, and I described how women in groups don't do anything because all they do is fight over emotional territory. That's the entirety of Donna and Cameron's relationship for the entire season. Like they don't move the plot along. They don't, like with Joe and Gordon, they'll apply leverage. Someone will get the other hand, the other guy will submit and just do it. Or the other guy, and then it's a process of submitting to, okay, I got leverage in this issue, so we're going to go my direction now. Okay, I got leverage on this issue, I'm going to go my direction now. With Cameron and Donna, it was nothing like that. It was Cameron, Donna never actually completely submitted to Cameron's vision. Donna never completely submitted to Cameron's vision, and Cameron never really allowed Donna to have her vision come out or get behind it until one episode, and then Jacob walked in and destroyed all of that. But it's like this incremental, painful two women chasing each other's tails over this ideal of themselves as this one woman visionary, each one of them wanting to be the special snowflake, so they would not submit. Donna would not submit herself completely to Cameron. If Donna wanted to be Cameron's underling or whatever the hell she wanted to be, she should have invested herself into what Cameron's vision was, period, and just let it happen. Instead, she kept on her own road and just never gave up, and never actually pushed it forward enough. So it was just this constant, like, both of them dragging each other down. And when I watched this, and I was like, this is exactly how this would happen for most women who aren't aware of the pitfalls. This is exactly how it would play out. They are being completely honest about the pitfalls of women's behavior in the workplace. And they're presenting a workplace that just barely survives, barely lurches forward on the virtue of Cameron's ability to suck resources in terms of people. And this is so realistic. And yet it is basically Chris Rogers and Chris Cantwell teabagging all of these viewers and press. Because they can't see what they're saying. They cannot apply the lens to see it. And so they're seeing something completely different. Like it's like we're a bunch of people with the ability to write language, and we're trying to communicate in language with a bunch of a Cro-Magnon tribe. And we're pointing to this and saying, this is what it says, and they're like, well, this is scratches in the dirt. What is that, an animal track? No, it's writing. It's writing. No, it must be an animal track. It's like they don't have the facility, the brain power. These feminist reviewers and press don't actually have the ability to question their own gender norms to the point of understanding what's being said in this show. And like I said,
I'd like to add that and actually extend the idea that they are toying with maybe even the journalists by saying one thing in the interview while doing something else entirely in the show. That specifically, as Cantwell said, he's tired of writing, white men, and so Joe and Gordon kind of take a backseat, yet in a certain way they don't, because they are even more highlighted, their issues and their problems that men face in the world are more highlighted, while the two females that are on the forefront, they're also highlighted, but in the worst that is sometimes in female relationships and in female character. So to me, the show, ever since the first season, but especially in the second one, has been illustrating the hidden pain of men, something that all men go through. And the reason we have men's rights is not even just the big issues of men's rights, but even the small, subtle things that men's respect activism, as I like to call it, sometimes is needed, because we're so used to denigrating men and seeing that they're privileged somehow just because they have a penis and that they have no emotions or nothing can hurt them and they never suffer, or when they do they should just suck it up. That whole idea is something that the show has been really challenging. And in the second season especially, for instance, we see the truth of Gordon and Joe always being there for each other. The two men basically have bonded, even though they don't always agree, even though Donna accused, Gordon of saying, "Oh, you remember all those things that you said about Joe?" So clearly Gordon has not had a pleasant time with Joe all the time, but still they're there for each other when most needed. And that is something I've seen in male relationships where they are friends instead of allies like women are. So the second something goes wrong, the typical average, more feminist women, they will turn on each other. And another thing is we see Gordon struggling through disease, and see that Donna is too busy chasing her own little thing without even including her husband. They used to always do everything together, but Cameron's replaced that sort of and driven her away from her husband in a way. And so she's constantly chasing after her own thing while Gordon is suffering in silence. And they also point out how his affair came out from a place of lack of support from his wife, which is often what happens. Men don't go around cheating on women out of nowhere, and they don't, especially married women, married men, I mean. And the curious anecdote I like to point out to that is Ashley Madison thing happened, and they released a bunch of names, and the first person that they released was a man who joined the website day after Valentine's Day. I mean, if that tells you anything about how men are treated and how women see them as disposable ATM machines and a thing to please women, and the moment a man has a vulnerability, the moment a man needs something, well, they're just cast aside and nobody cares, and men are like, well, fine, I'll cheat or I'll find someone, the whole leaving men for a younger woman, well, nobody talks about the fact that they had a disapproving, scowling wife at home who was utterly impatient and unhappy with them. And here they find somebody who actually values them for the first time in however many years. And of course, that happens. So they say that it's feminist author and writers, but the things that they do, even something that would be seen as bad that men do, like cheat, well, they show that as coming from a place of need, not some, douchebag being a douchebag like men are, right? And not to mention that Gordon actually tells his wife about the affair instantly. Like, as soon as she questions, he was like, well, that's why I couldn't tell you, because I had an affair. And yet she still keeps the abortion secret from him. All throughout the whole thing, she doesn't tell him, even though they're supposed to be she's pushing this idea of honesty, and yet she still hides the abortion, which he had absolutely all the right to hear about and to know about and to have a decision in terminating it or not, which is yet another MRA issue that happens sometimes. And once again, everybody thinks of Joe as a sociopath, even though, despite all the evidence against it, it's just their pet theory that they like to cling on to blame everything on a man. And I mean, what a perfect analogy that is for a lot of the rat femme attitudes. And of course, Gordon also wants to fix the relationship with his wife.
Anna,
yes.
You're breaking up quite a bit. Is anybody else hearing that?
Yes.
Okay.
The mic is breaking up.
Do you try talking again?
All right. Is it better at all?
No, it's not
No.
better. Maybe try dropping and coming back in, and I'll just hold the fort till you get back.
You kind of sound like Doctor Who, that guy. It's it's workable. If you can imagine it's an episode of Doctor Who.
But Anna, I wanted to tell you, those are all really good points I was going to mention myself. But yeah, you are. Your mic is acting a little weird. It's like I don't know if it runs on batteries or. I have a friend who's had a mic that ran on batteries. I don't know where you even get those, and whenever it would get low, it would sound like, I don't know.
Yeah, she was starting to break up. She's starting to sound like the Terminator.
Yeah.
The Aninator. Okay. Well, what I wanted to do is take off a little bit on what Anna was talking about, and the thing with Joe and Gordon is that yes, they have fights, but what you'll see and what you'll see with men usually is they will establish, they'll get a certain amount of leverage. And one of them will say, this is what we're doing, and the other one, even if they disagree, will do it. Will actually go ahead and do it. Joe did not agree with helping Mutiny, yet when Gordon got leverage on him and forced him to agree, he did it, and he did it as far as he humanly could. Yeah, it's like that's why men get things done, because even if they disagree and they don't totally agree with what the other guy is telling them to do, they'll do it. And but they can also exchange that. The other guy can say, well, this is what we should do now, and they'll do it. And it's interesting. And like I said, Cameron and Donna never got to that point of actually even agreeing but disagreeing, but still moving forward. It's like that idea that you've got to keep moving forward. That seem to have, but women don't.
How's my sound?
It's much better now. Did you want to continue?
I did. I just had a few more.
Go ahead.
A few more, yeah. So yeah, when Gordon wants to fix their relationship by saying, let's work through this, of course the first thing that Donna does is go talk to Cameron, and first thing she says is, I don't want to be the woman who leaves her sick husband, but doesn't mean that I won't. So instantly she's already threatening with divorce, while all Gordon wants to do is fix it. And then in return she extorts him, basically. It is literally extortion. She says, give me money or you will not get this relationship or your kids or any of that. And of course it's women that are initiating divorce, which is quite frequently the truth in reality as well, both with Sarah and with Donna talking to Cameron and being like, well, I think I should leave him and all that, or I think it's falling apart and I don't know if we can fix it. It's like, well, Gordon's all for fixing it. And then ultimately Donna and Cameron together are fucking over Joe, even though they know he's leaving. They just want to have their revenge little party. So in a variety of ways, they're showing the reality of the world that a lot of other pro-feminist outlets are not showing. The fact that men are good, can be good basically, and that women can be evil, and that women have certain issues that impede them from progress, that or make them not so perfect human beings. That's not being discussed, while we see a lot of straw mans about how men are bad, which also ignores the reality of them being devoted and loyal and have these things that women perhaps don't show frequently. And ultimately, there is evidence to me of it being a non-man-hating show that a lot of the feminist outlets do have. Like the little girls of Gordon's, they want to be with their daddy, and they're like, our daddy makes a better breakfast than mommy. You know, they preferentially choose the father of the mother, while we don't see that in a lot of the feminist-themed outlets. It's always, you know, mommy is king or queen, whatever. And also to put to rest the idea that Joe is a sociopath or all that. Clearly, there's been evidence over and over. First season, second season, he has an emotion that he then stifles in first season and puts on a mask to present this visionary leader, go-getter thing that he was doing. And in second season, he decided to drop even the mask and just be authentic, and he got fucked even worse for being authentic. And I feel like perhaps at the end of season 2, we finally see Joe kind of become closer to sociopathy than he ever has been before, with the line of, you know, there's, if you don't trust anyone, then you're secure, and that whole thing. So that's the scene where we finally see him turn cold. But all throughout it, we have men doing positive things, like Bosworth, like even Jacob Wheeler. He doesn't clip the wings of his daughter. Like the second he says something possibly questionable about his daughter's behavior, she says, hey, Dad, don't do that. And he's like, yes, honey, you're right. I'm sorry. You know, every single man in power or not in power there is kind in a way, except for obviously a few douchebags. Yet the women that are in the show, they have to work hard to be redeemable. So I think the authors are definitely saying one thing while showing another, and it's a fun little mind game they're playing, which I think is necessary a lot of times to get past the feminist censors and to still deliver your story to those people who have the eyes to see it. And you give the lip service to the press and to fans, and it's, I guess, the way they found a loophole.
Yeah, well, I was thinking when I watched it that, you know, not only did they find a loophole, but they are actually mocking the hell. Like the joke is, and you can't sucker people in without sucking up to them a bit. So the joke is on the feminist reviewers and the press and the media. They're being made fun of by this show. Like the show creators are essentially just sticking their finger up.
Especially the reviewer for the Medium who mentioned us.
Yeah.
Gave a special shout out to us.
Well, apparently we're responsible for Cameron being seen seen as horrible because we're the evil misogynist.
I put it there if you want to have a look at it. It's the Medium article in the side.
Yeah. Okay, so people who aren't in the know, the Medium article made us, men's rights activists, and Gamergate responsible for Cameron, the main female character in this show, being seen as horrible. We are responsible for that. So once again, Gamergate is responsible.
Not the authors who wrote her that way, but
not the authors who wrote her that way, or the audience members who are justifiably picking up on her absolutely shitty behavior.
How dare we point it out?
Yeah, because the funny thing is that the first season, Cameron was pretty almost singular in her uniquely shitty behavior. She was singular in her cuntiness. But in the second season, they added they added a baker's dozen. Donna, Sarah, Jules. Like it's like every woman.
Donna's mother. My God.
Donna's mother. Every woman in this show is a cunt. She's a completely unlikable. Oh wait, no. There are two exceptions.
Yes, there's the secretary,
Debbie,
and the woman that worked inside of the tech place that
the Fun Times female programmer. And there are actual threads wishing the show was about them. The main female characters in the show are, to a woman, horrible people. They are totally immoral, and what's funny is the only way you can see them as laudable characters is by applying this retrogressive filter of traditional gender norms, where we're at gender roles where you cannot see women as moral agents. You literally cannot see them as making moral choices. They're only acting in response to the men around them. That's how they can continue to see these characters as being moral, by completely removing their personhood, completely removing it. And it's like, and that's why I have a little bit of faith in the show creators, because it seems like they've hit some sort of sweet spot, and they've made me realize that if this principle that Halt and Catch Fire is living by, using this gender lens filter that we put that feminists and every other person in our society who can't question that, who can't question the lens that they see gender through, and can't get past it. So they're essentially they literally cannot see certain things. They can't read the language that these shows are written in. If this principle was applied to every show on television, every game, every comic book, every piece of media that people wrote, we would essentially be living in a society that is entirely understanding of who we are, the people who can see through this lens. We would be living in that society. And the other people, the feminist reviewers, the press, they would be milling around in their more primitive society, and it would be like we would be just in parallel universes. We would be enjoying these media that's really rich and deeply layered and complex, that has fascinating characters, and maybe we could even start getting to, once we understand the problems that Halt and Catch Fire is showing about women's relationships, we could start having women's relationships that get past those problems. And then we could have all this multi-layered, intricate, complex, deeply resonant media for us, and then they could be squatting in the dirt, picking freaking bugs out of each other's hair about their I don't know, rock arrangements. And it would be like just two parallel societies.
It's like we put Amish people in charge of our futuristic empire. It's mad.
Well, but no, it's like, you mean in terms of the press and the feminists? Well, of course, yeah, that's...
Well, yeah, they're this insulated fucking echo-chambered group of ideologues who believe that women must be this thing and men must be this thing. And, you know, we can allow them to have their thing. It's very quaint, and I'm sure it's very enjoyable if you're into that sort of thing, but it's just weird that they're in charge of all of this bullshit.
Yeah, it does seem a little bit weird. I wouldn't even call them Amish, because I think Amish are probably more advanced. Like, we who can see through this gender lens and actually recognize women as moral agents and not just responses to men's actions, we are, I don't know, I think we're on the precipice of something larger. So it's not like the difference between modern society and the Amish. I think it's more like the difference between modern society and, I don't want to say Neanderthal, but like, I don't know, Australopithecus maybe. It's like
Bronze Age?
Well, no, not Bronze Age, friend. We're going way back there. Like we're talking about the dawn of using fire. Like they're still like dancing away from it. Like, oh my God.
We don't want to say not Neanderthals, so let's just say, well we don't want to say Neanderthals, so let's say not Neanderthals, eh? maybe Neanderthals had it right.
Yeah.
The humans that had sex with Neanderthals.
Well, apparently they did. Okay, let's not get on a topic, but a tangent. But so one of
Neanderthals had big brains and were probably gentler, and humans killed them all.
No, I actually don't think that was quite true. I think that we interbred and just ended up being more successfully socially. But it's okay. But this is an aside. Like what I'm trying to get at is, it's right there. I mean, we can have everything that we want, because they can't understand the language that we speak. And I read these articles about the show, and it's just hilarious. It's like watching a chimpanzee try to figure out what alphabet blocks do. And it's not mean-spirited hilarious, it's just sort of funny. It's like, that's just not going to happen for you guys. Press person, the medium person who wrote about, it's just not going to happen for you. And it's not going to happen for you, Vulture reviewers. It's just not going to happen for you, Mary Sue. And
the Mary Sue one was just
you're just not going to get there. You're just not going to. It's just not for you. And it's so funny because they're lauding a show, and the show creators literally, this is what I see them doing. They're rubbing their they're rubbing their balls all over your face, Mary Sue. They're rubbing their balls all over your face. And you can't even tell because you cannot read the language that they're rubbing their balls all over your face in.
Can you taste the saltiness? No.
Yeah, do you
Yeah,
taste
it's salty to
Are you
me.
taste it? Do you need a few more slaps, Mary Sue? Because I got some. Oh, Jesus Christ. And it's
Give
so
you a
bad.
mushroom bruise. And,
Oh.
not, but the Mary Sue article was especially unbelievable, and the horrible interviews were through Mackenzie Davis and Kerry Bichet. Is that how you pronounce her last name?
I'm not sure. I couldn't
But
help you there.
they've
I'm not
they've
the one
kind
to
of
ask.
played it up. Yeah, they've kind of played that up as well. Do you want to go through the points one by one you compiled earlier that you want to talk about?
Some of the cool stuff, and I mean, I think everybody listening should watch this show and look for what I'm talking about. Look for the fact that the relationship between Donna and Cameron doesn't make the plot go anywhere.
No.
They never actually, Donna never actually really submits to Cameron, and
No.
Cameron never actually listens to Donna. So they have no effective teamwork whatsoever, and because of that, none of their interactions actually make the plot move forward. Never.
And yet we're left with the baffling thing that Donna is insisting on working with Cameron against all logic of the universe, to the point where she even ends up forcing Gordon to do it at the end, despite
She got
the fact
mummy
she spent the
issues.
whole. Yeah.
She's got mummy issues. Look at her mother.
Yeah. She also
Her
got
mother
money
is
issues.
like-
That's why she. Yeah.
No, her mother is a bit of a Cameron herself.
Yep.
She's using Donna's emotional vulnerabilities to try to manipulate her daughter into doing what she thinks is best. It's exactly what Cameron does to Donna. It's that Donna has mommy issues. But what I wanted to say was, it's like Chris Cantwell has said and Chris Rogers have said they have created a female-driven plot, but they haven't. And what's really funny is when the women are driving the plot, they move it forward by thimblefuls. Like they move the plot forward by thimblefuls, and then a man steps into frame, and suddenly we've got the shovel out, and we're shoveling this thing. And another man moves into frame, we got the backhoe out, and then we go back to the women, and we're back to the thimbles. One thimble, two thimble, three thimble, and then we go back to the man, the shovel's back out. Let's get this whole dug, ladies. Oh no, we gotta use our little thimbles. And this is like. You have not created a female-driven plot. You've created something impossible to watch, because every time you look at the women, nothing's happening.
And every time you look at the men, you keep having this aggravated near heart attack of screaming at the screen. Why are you helping these people?
Well, it's not.
Why
just
are you doing this for them?
Every time you look, what's happened is that they are. All of the agency is applied to preciously few scenes where men are in. And that's it. Yeah. All of the plot movement is in those precious few scenes where the men are actually in them. And every time you move to the women, nothing happens. And
actually, there was
one thing. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that there's one scene for me that solidified, a set of scenes rather, that solidified this for me. And it was in the 5th episode when you finally just got a tantalizing bit of Gordon and Joe working together and talking together. First at Gordon's house, then that awesome scene in the diner, and then them actually building something in the computer room. And for a moment there, I thought the season's now coming alive, and then it went away again. And it was there that I realized you were right. That was the point where I suddenly realized, holy crap, something's actually happening. I'm really enjoying this, and then it just disappeared again. And it was gone.
Yep.
But I did dearly love that scene in the diner. I thought it was really, really great.
What was interesting about the first season is if you really watch it carefully, the real conflict is between Donna and Cameron. Donna doesn't want Cameron's OS. She thinks it's ridiculous. And she tries to convince Joe to get rid of it, and then Cameron's trying to convince Joe to keep it, and that conflict is actually played between Joe and Gordon, both of whom are more willing to compromise than Donna and Cameron. They actually, at one point, Joe is agreeing with Donna, and Gordon is agreeing with Cameron. And they're trying to come to an agreement. And they actually have to use the men to mediate their conflict, to actually make something happen. And that is such a very clever observation of human beings, because
Yes, it is.
they are essentially using Joe and Gordon as their go-betweens. And the reason why that makes things happen is because when Joe establishes that there's something he's not going to be flexible on, Gordon submits and works towards that goal. And when Gordon establishes there's something he's not going to be flexible on, Joe submits and works towards that goal. So there is movement in that relationship. They can march forward, even though the two women cannot resolve their own conflict, is what we see in the second season, is that Donna and Cameron cannot resolve their own conflict in a productive way. They can't. They need the male go-betweens because they are capable of resolving the conflict in a productive way. And that is such an incredibly insightful analysis of gender relations. It's like I am really surprised if these people are... I mean, like I said, they could be so stupid that they threw themselves at the ground and missed, but this seems to be in the context of what they explored in the second season. The fact that they explored the paralysis that Donna and Cameron are in, while showing in the first season how they needed the men to actually resolve their problems because they couldn't do themselves, that seems so on the ball for it to be accidental. Okay, go ahead, Brian.
I just wanted to bring up the statement that the creator made about being bored with writing white male characters. And I don't know how much he means it, but I just wanted to analyze that statement. What does it mean to write a white male character? And or a straight white male character? Because when I see, and maybe this is just the way that writing has been lately, like I say lately, I mean like in the last 20 years or so, when you are writing about a person that belongs to a group that we are supposed to perceive as marginalized or oppressed or not like at the top of the food chain or whatever it is we want to call it, typically we write about them, or people write about them as though that characteristic is definitive of that person. So, you know, if you're writing about, if you write a story about black characters, then their blackness becomes a really important part of what you're seeing. If you write about females, then the fact that they're female becomes a really big, important part of the narrative as well, right? So that becomes like central to the definition of that. The funny thing about white male straight characters, or just white male characters, because I mean obviously Joe isn't entirely straight, is there's nothing to write about with regards to their identity. The only thing that you can do is tell the story, because you can't write about their identity in a way that is like you know, trying to bring attention to something. So let's assume that he really is bored with writing white male characters. Then that only said, what that says to me is that he wants to write about things that other people can relate to with immediacy, because they can say, oh, this is a woman, or this is a gay man, or this is a trans person, or this is a black man, or whatever, and that becomes like the center of what they're writing about. But white male characters, you can't depend on that identity as part of, you know, the definitive characteristic. Like, I don't know what it means to be a white male character in fiction. It doesn't mean anything. It's actually like, I don't want to say the default, but basically the way that people write, it doesn't actually have any impact at all on what the story is. So that means that you are not able to use it as a crutch. So that means you actually have to put in some fucking work and write a good story for those characters. And I think that's one of the reasons why, in my opinion, characters like Joe, Boz, and Gordon turn out to be more interesting, because they can't depend on the fact that they're male or that they're white or whatever to be a part of their narrative. So he has to give them stuff to make them, you know, to add drama. He has to give Joe like a complicated marriage with a father-in-law that he wants to maybe at one point impress, while also making some success and seeing like business ventures, and he has to please his wife to be and all of that. And Gordon has to deal with either what appeared to be a disease, but then it turned out to be just like a mental disorder, and then he's experiencing that. So you actually have to write them in a really good way. Boz, who I think we didn't mention it, but I thought about this in the last episode. He goes, his son gets him a job with a company, and he goes to their party, and they're talking, and he's telling them jokes and stuff. What
happened? What happened there?
It was the dog whistle of evil.
Essentially, they did this. But that was like the dog whistle of evil. I think what they were getting at, because you have to pay attention. At least I was paying attention to the dialogue, and what I think it was is Boz was talking to the bigwigs, and his son said, "Look, I'm really glad to be here. I feel like this is kind of like a great opportunity or whatever." And then the bigwig said, "Well, hey, you brought us your father." Mm-hmm. And I think that what Boz was feeling was he was feeling a little bit of remorse for the fact that maybe he thought to himself, I think the only reason why my son is at this party right now is because of me and not because of his own merit. And I feel he felt guilt for that. Like, if you look at it, you can see that there's a moment where Boz says, holy shit, my son is only at this party having an opportunity to speak to these men because of me, not because he's good at what he does. And the worst part is that he's the one that got me the job. Like, he got me the audience. So I think that he deserves the recognition more than I'm getting.
But I actually... the guy said, I was a young kid and a manager came in and told me to do something, and I just, threw a coffee on the thing and said, how do you like them apples? And Boz is a manager, so I was like, and it was right after that he reacted, so I was like, is that him just recognizing that the bigwig is a total, a self-important asshole, or what?
I think I'm more with Brian with a slight caveat. I think that Boz was worried that he was taking away his son's thunder.
Yeah, and also stealing his potential. Because the son is only at the party, according to them, because Boz was they wanted to meet him. Imagine getting invited to an event, and then they ask you to bring someone, and then you do, and then they mention, just like, in casual conversation, probably not even aware that they had said it, that it sounds almost as if the only reason why you're there is because you knew someone they wanted to meet. And that's kind of shitty. And
maybe this is what Christopher Cantwell is sick of writing. Guilt. He's just sick of writing characters that have to have intrinsic guilt. Either that, or he's just saying, I'm sick of writing white male characters because that's what he has to say to try and save his career from this apparent disaster.
Well, it is possible when you mention it. I guess if there is one thing that you can write into white male characters is guilt for being white and male. And it reminds me, one of the people on the that were on the this is a little bit of a segue, but this is what I wanted to point out because I think it's relevant. One of the guys that was on the call-in show that couldn't make it on earlier, like last week, wanted me to talk about Agent Carter, which was normally that would have been a Nerdcast topic, so I didn't respond to it then. And what I thought about it, and Agent Carter is basically a spin-off of, it's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that focuses on Peggy Carter, who was one of the characters from Captain America in the Captain America films. One of the things I hated about the Agent Carter show, though, was when she was a side character or like a supporting character in the films, she was a really good, strong character. Regardless of whether or not she was female is irrelevant. She was just well written. She was interesting. She was, she was tough in a way that didn't seem like it wasn't pandering. It was just sort of like played very straight, But when she got her own show, it became all about the fact that she was a woman in a man's world. That became the whole show, and that made the show fucking awful. And so this is like this goes back to what I was saying before. When you're writing a character, I think that the identity politics aspect of it needs to be left at the door if you want to be really successful. You want to talk about something in a very if you're going to talk about something, it should be in a bigger scale. This is really petty stuff to me. And I think that, Mike's got a point when he says the guilt thing is probably what, that he was getting sick of, but maybe he needs to just write them well, you know. And I mean, I'm not saying he's not. I like the male characters, whether he intends to or not. They're actually coming out more interesting than the female ones, and I think that that's also the guilt is playing into that too, because one of the reasons why I think people run into a lot of problems writing female characters is that they don't want to put them through too much. They basically have to walk this tightrope where it's between writing it really well and presenting them often enough and passing the Bechdel test and being not too sexist, but yet like allowing them to be free and allowing them to be aggressive but not like fail too often. And it just basically becomes
a mess.
Yeah, it's a mess. Like, you can't navigate that, you know, unless you stop giving fucks.
Well, you mentioned earlier.
I think they totally stopped giving fucks. Like, the characters, every single female character is a cunt on this show.
Well, that's just it. If you say that white men are good at guilt, then by extension the women are incapable of guilt, and they're capable of showing guilt. You can show them being upset about things, and even upset about things that may tangentially to them in their minds be something that they acted on, but they never show any genuine contrition. There's never any indication that they've done wrong and do something about it, except there's never any guilt on the part of the women in the show. Is a weird thing.
Can I just talk to that briefly? There was a moment of guilt with Donna and the abortion, but I'll let that.
Okay. One thing I wanted to add, though, that it's true that you were saying like all the women on the show, they're cunts. But one of the things that's really interesting is that do you think that you're part of the minority that notices that, and that most people say, well, she's justified for X, Y, Z reason?
Oh yeah, at least in the press, they think that they're justified because they completely remove women's moral agency.
Exactly.
They're incapable of frickin' seeing it. Like, they even made the Jules justified. Jules turned like a barracuda on Gordon as soon as he had a vulnerability. I mean, it didn't matter.
I think it's more insidious than that.
Sorry?
That they excuse. It's more insidious than that. I think. Well, subconsciously, instinctually, of course. I think they excuse that behavior so that they themselves can get away with it later.
Also, oh, sorry, I've lost it.
Well, actually, I can add to that if Anthony doesn't mind me stepping over him. I think if we want to look at the male half of the equation, I think there's an element that if you cannot maintain this idea that women have it worse unless you constantly remove their moral agency, because that's the connection between their actions and what they experience. So if you say, well, Cameron sort of deserves to, I have no idea what would go to jail probably, at the very least. You can't see her as a victim. You can't see her as worse off. So if you see that her actions are consequences of her moral choices, then you no longer see her in that victim class or in that damsel role. And I think that's what they're fighting with, and they can't see. But what I wanted to say is that it's pretty universal. From what I've seen in the actual fandom, like the people who are really hardcore fans, they don't like the second season, and there is a certain amount of perception that the women in this show are awful. Like they're all crazy.
That's what I was going to say and forgot to say. Is that it's not just the press; it's the fandom is very divided on this.
The press isn't divided, but the fandom is.
Yeah, if you go on IMDb like we have been, then
Internet Movie Database.
Yeah, if you go there, you can find the message board for Halt and Catch Fire and go through the threads. There is one thread there just called Cameron Sucks, which has almost 400 replies, and they split right down the middle of people who think Cameron is great or justified or yes, Cameron sucks. That's how divisive it is to see one of the most awful people ever to be in a TV show just to say that she sucks. That's how divisive it's been.
Go ahead, Brian. Did you still want to talk, Brian?
No, I'm sorry. I was just trying to get to the
mute button.
Yeah.
Swimming against the tide.
No, I think that's it. I mean, like, I think that the idea that the press is basically still trying to sell this idea that the women are not total cunts and that everything they do is justified, and maybe that comes from the same place that this whole it's the same kind of parts of people's brains is say women can't be sexist against men because they're punching up or because they're, they're the what do we call it, the spunky underdog. And it's that same thing where, well, they've been hard done by, so if they overreact, that's okay. Or they're, like for whatever reason. And I think that they give them a pass. The press does, and I think that there are probably, I hope that some people are starting to like wake up to the, to that idea if what you're saying that's going on IMDb is true. But then how can, like that Cameron Sucks thing, you said it was divided, how can anyone take her side? I mean, she's just fucked up, I mean, she never does anything for anyone but herself. Almost never. And the only person she ever apologized to was Donna once, or maybe twice.
And only when she really has to? Well, she apologized.
Yeah, when she really has to because she wants to get something out of her. At the end of the show, when Donna's marriage is on the verge of collapse, and she's basically like, just like, clearly stressed out, she's been crying all night, it's obvious. Cameron sees it as an opportunity to get her to go to California so that they can like kick the business back into high gear. Like that was to me it looked like an opportunity that she took.
Yeah, oh no, I saw that too. She zeroed in on Cameron or on Donna at a vulnerable moment. I wanted to say one thing before we get into this because I really want to get into the comparison between Joe and Cameron. And all the statements that because people don't see Joe as bad as Cameron, that's misogyny. I want to get into that, but first I want to make a statement about seeing women as moral agents. Like there's a real aversion to seeing women as responsible for the things that happen to them, and we want to maintain this constant idea that women are not responsible morally in the way that men are. That's not a role that women take, and we've had throughout ages, we've had excuses why women can't be as moral as men. They can't be expected to be held to the same moral standard, but at the same time somehow we're more moral. And before it was the weaker vessel bullshit, and now it's the oppressed vessel bullshit. And it's all the same thing. But let's get into Cameron versus Joe.
Okay.
If you guys don't mind. Like, I want to do some comparisons. I want to explain why I think that Cameron is worse.
Yeah.
I think we'll probably all agree with each other on this, though.
I don't think you need to convince us.
No, but just to take off on Brian's statement about how Cameron zeroed in on Donna when Donna was emotionally vulnerable. That's exactly what she did. She zeroed in on her, and Cameron is always closing. She's always pushing for her own point of view with whoever she's with. And when somebody shows a vulnerability, that's when she strikes with fake sympathy and tries to push her own point of view. And that's exactly what she did. She zeroed in on Donna when she was vulnerable and started to push her own point of view and created a situation in which Donna did something absolutely stupid. She is essentially gambling her children's and her and Gordon's future on Cameron's latest reactivity, because that's the only time that Cameron does anything is when she's reacting to something, when she's taking revenge or reacting to something. She created mutiny as a reaction to Joe. She destroyed West Group as a reaction to Jacob, and now she's going after this clunker of a server because she doesn't want to pay higher server fees. And it's like all of her actions are not proactive in building her business, but reactive in terms of taking revenge or just playing out petty vindictiveness. And that's not a business that's going to grow. And the only reason that Mutiny continues to exist is because she's a freaking cult leader and she sucks people in and absorbs their resources. It doesn't grow like a business the way Joe is growing a business. Joe's getting investment. He's probably going to get employees. I mean, he's growing a business. She doesn't grow like that. She simply maintains by sucking in new resources from a new cult member, and it's sort of gross. And it's
sort
like
of gross.
It's a lot gross.
Yeah.
And to make a comparison between how Joe operates and Cameron operates, there are lines that Joe doesn't cross. They're there. And if you watch his behavior, you will see them. For example, when Gordon had his misadventure where he stole the Cabbage Patch dolls, and he saw the dead body on the ground, and he was really emotionally shaken up from that whole thing, and he comes home, and Joe has meanwhile been spending time with Donna and their girls, and just sort of hanging out with them. The moment Gordon walks through the door, Joe knows how upset he is. And at that point in time, Joe had been convinced that the OS that Cameron was proposing was the way to go with the Cardiff Giant. So he had a plan, or he had been convinced through things that had happened during the dinner with Donna that he should probably move forward with this idea. He didn't zero in on Gordon and start to sell him on the OS. He left so that Gordon could be with Donna. That's the difference. There's an ethical core to Joe that Cameron doesn't have. And I don't see any evidence that she does have it. He struggles with moral questions. Does she struggle with any moral question? Like, do you see her once in the entire 2 seasons ever struggle with how to go forward in an ethical way?
No.
Never.
Not once. Also, I really can't imagine Joe ever extorting labor with a false promise of payment, or false promise of a completely false ideal of having a say. I mean, that's basically either a cult or slave labor. That was the point where my jaw nearly dropped through out of my skull when I realized that this is a slave cult.
Yeah.
That was just when it reached super gross levels.
Yeah, it's every. I'm trying to think of some other direct parallels. Okay. Joe, in the first season, and this is a spoiler for anybody who's listening, Joe, in order to fake the press, which is really funny in and of itself, did you notice how unctuous and unbelievably, like just smarmy the press was portrayed in this show?
Yes. Yes, that was very clever.
And Joe fakes the press by essentially wiping Cameron's hard drive. He creates this false drama by wiping Cameron's hard drive. He actually has the backups, but he wipes her hard drive and then pretends that her backups got wiped as well. And this was in order to get to get the press to write about their project. So it was ultimately to the benefit of everybody involved in the project. And he did this, and yes, it's a mean-spirited prank. But they are trying to compare him doing that with Cameron loading a virus into the West Group computers just before a stockholder meeting that Joe is the keynote speaker at, and their computers are melting down as he's having his keynote speech about the very thing that is melting down. So she is humiliating him in public and destroying his life and destroying his relationship with his wife. She's just like wood chippering through his life. And not even because she wants revenge against him, just because she wants revenge against Jacob, the CEO of West Group. Whether or not that revenge is necessary is another matter. But she totally destroyed Joe just because she wanted revenge.
Yeah, it
just
should be
for
noted
herself.
It should be noted that it emphasized that Joe did have the backups, which means he had no intention of actually destroying Cameron's work, or hurting Cameron permanently.
No.
So he didn't actually
do any
destroy
permanent damage.
Yeah, and that's another point of real greasiness against both Cameron and Donna, because then we find out that Donna helped her do it, and helped her do it by stealing Gordon's program, and then screaming about it in Gordon's face at the end, that you're worried about having your work stolen, well, mine actually was stolen. Right as she admits she stole his program.
Yeah, that's fucked. Okay, so here we have is Donna having stolen Gordon's program to destroy Joe, screaming at Gordon about having someone steal her stuff.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tangent away from Cameron versus Joe, but I thought it was an interesting point.
It is actually no. Cameron is making Donna as bad as she is. That's what's happening here.
That's the other sociopath thing, is that is making people act as badly as you do.
Yeah.
Eventually. Yeah, that's the really spooky thing. But any more points of comparison and contrast between Joe and Cameron that are important? The way they treat loved ones, supposed partners, because that's a really big contrast. Is just looking at how Cameron treats people she's supposedly intimate with.
Well, yeah, that's a. Huh. There was some more I wanted to say, but I'm sort of. Oh, right. Did anyone else pick out? Like, I'm pretty sure you guys did that. Joe was suicidal that last episode, right?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yes.
literally, Gordon saved his life.
Yep.
After Cameron and Donna destroyed his life, they destroyed his marriage, they destroyed his working relationship with West Group, or at least any kind of possible relationship with West Group, and his business reputation. After they essentially destroyed him, he was suicidal. He was practicing to kill himself, and after his wife divorced him, and he had nothing left. And the funny thing is that he was still wearing his wedding ring throughout the entire episode. Even though he signs the divorce papers in like the first couple minutes of the episode, he's still wearing his wedding ring.
Yeah.
The guy was destroyed.
Did you see his face when he was signing those papers? Wow.
Well, I mean,
when he was signing the divorce papers, that was a broken man.
Also, his face when he thought his wife was about to walk in. He mentally prepared himself, and then it wasn't even her.
Yeah, she'd come in before he'd even arrived and left without saying a word.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. I mean, there was some Donna and Sarah seemed to change pretty dramatically this season.
Donna
blindsided me.
Yeah.
Sarah was just completely. What happened? What was that character? Was that even a character?
Well, no, you don't understand. She entered the cunt field, the Halt and Catch cunt field. She became a female character on Halt and Catch Cunt, and she had to become a cunt. She was a cunt all along. She got bitten by Cameron.
A lycanthrope.
Shouldn't that be whiff cunt?
A whiff cunt.
Oh, jeez. But
they don't tell you about the whiff wolves, hey? They're the ones who fuck you up.
That character is either a schizophrenic or just put in the show to torture someone. Because the changes in mood and the changes in and seeing and hearing things that no one else can hear and see. And we could talk a while about Sarah Wheeler, or we could just do what I advised and forget they ever existed, because even though this character was elevated to the title sequence, she's A, in half the episodes, and B, just ends up being a schizoid trope.
No, she just ends up. I don't know what Chris, because the two creators are called Chris. I don't know what Chris and Chris are trying to say about women, but it's not a good thing, because apparently all women are cunts.
Did they have an intention originally to have this character remain for several seasons? Is she going to be back, or?
Yeah, they said it was a reoccurring character, but I don't know what the heck they're going to do with her now. Are they going to reveal some sort of mysterious? I don't know. Maybe she's like part of the X-Files, just like an FBI agent, and it was like deep undercover work or some shit. She's.
Yeah, I read that.
Jo was secretly an alien, and she was just
she fell
studying
in love with the monk.
She's studying his habits until her superior said she was getting too close to her subject.
And next season we'll find out she's pregnant with an alien baby.
Yes. Oh my God. Well, I think that would make it.
We should be writing this show. Why aren't we writing this show?
Exactly. Oh man, but
well,
yeah,
I think that we are like we're like the journalists that journal the journalists. Like we're like the meta journalists, you know? Does that make sense?
So kind of like the dream.
Who's journalisting us? Hey?
Yeah, we're the watchers that watch the Watchmen.
Yeah.
Who journalists the
journalist. Hey,
I think,
answer me.
Mike, I think it may end with us because we sort of journalist ourselves.
Yeah,
unfortunately. Or at least to some degree.
Speak for yourself.
Oh, come, you do that too.
It's about
spitting.
ethics.
Well, I never.
It's Halt. It's about ethics in thinking. It's about ethics in that voice in your head.
Yes.
Yeah. We have somewhat smoothly transitioned into point 2, which you wrote, which is delightfully every woman is a cunt.
So how much more
point
you can
two.
go with that?
Because we've all pretty much covered it, but we can spend some extra time trying to decipher why.
Can't decipher
What?
it.
Oh yes, because Sarah Wheeler was the baffling one. I wondered if she had some additional baggage and that she wasn't willing, but she turned out to be no character at all.
Well, I mean, if she did have some additional baggage that she wasn't talking about, I mean, we didn't find out about it, so we can't really say. We don't know enough about her to really know. She just, like, she's not enough of a character. She's not even a character.
That's what I'm saying. Is that that's the most mysterious thing. Is that of the 3 new additions for this season, she was the one who got top billing and was the least of a character, and was in it the least, and ends up being the most mysterious and the most hateful in the end.
Yeah, but maybe it's this whole thing about, putting women to the forefront. They wanted to show that there's like some sort of female-heavy show while not actually following through on that promise. And
Oh yeah, that's true.
And I think I can understand how the feminist reviewers and the press and the media are doing this. They don't care that the women are cunts. They think that's empowerment because somehow removing a person's agency and personal ethics is empowerment.
Ugh.
Yeah, I think that they think that this is, and the problem is that what the press seems to like isn't translating into viewership. This season has worse viewership than the first season, which means there are people who liked the first season who tuned out of this one. That means that if they continue along this line, they're going to get less viewership in season 3. It's not growing; it's declining.
They're going to end up with negative viewership, which is, I think that people watch the show, then demand to have their subscriptions cancelled, and specifically mention this show as why they're having it cancelled.
I want my hour back.
I want my hour back. I'm cancelling AMC because of Halt and Catch Fire. Halt and Caught Fire.
Yeah, you can't really say much more about point 2 unless you want to go into specific examples of the cuntitude of this season.
I have to say, there are women in the world. I mean, a while back I said that this show should be titled Bromance: The Reason, because this is the reason why I am now shipping Joe and Gordon. I don't even care if Gordon is straight. No, and you know what? I could be completely platonic. That's fine. But they need to end up together. They need to go into the middle of the wilderness and build some sort of cabin or build a business, and on the door it needs to say no girls allowed. Because and is this what this comes to? Because every woman in this show is so horrible compared to the men. And it's believable. They're horrible in a way that women are horrible. And men in this show are noble and honorable and giving in the way that men are. But it's like, it's so depressing. Why do you have to do this? Why?
It's what makes the show so obsessive and worth coming back even as you fear and loathe it, and make sure that there's either something sugary and sweet to eat while you watch it or someone to hold you.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Watching it. Yeah, I had a bag of Maltesers for the last episode.
No, I just had my husband. He could hold me, help me through this. He never gave up on the show, I have to admit. So I have to give credit to my husband for because I was gonna be like, I want this show to cancel, but I always had this conflict in me because I couldn't stand this show, but my husband didn't want it canceled, so I was like, I can't hope for it to be canceled because that would upset him.
Well, we'll see in about 2 or 3 weeks at best whether it gets.
It's not looking good because nobody is tweeting. The principals aren't really talking about it.
Jonathan Lisco did. He did actually come out and talk about it, and he said it was important. The critical cycle was important of especially the last episode, and he was really paying attention to what the critics were saying about it because he said that was really important, and they were enjoying the fact that the people that they really wanted to endorse the show right up near the end were endorsing the show. And so that may be their hope, is that if Jonathan Lisco is right, he's the executive producer, so he's the one who will get the nod ultimately. He'll be the first one to know.
Okay, in which case, this is what I think is happening. They appeal to the press specifically to keep this show alive. And in the process, they're essentially teabagging them. Because this show is nothing like what they're saying it is. They are literally cock-slapping the press and laughing about it. And they don't. That's just like Joe in the Smarmy Press guy in episode 3. That's exactly what they're doing. They're fucking doing a ruse. And they're laughing about it. They're using these people. They're using them like 2-bit whores. And they don't even aware of it. And it's glorious. Yes, I hope Halt and Catch Fire gets a season 3. And I hope it's because Chris Cantwell and Chris Rogers successfully manipulated the press into advocating for a show which is exact opposite of what they think it is. Which is a show that is essentially giving them the middle finger. It's glorious. This must be a social experiment. Yeah.
Well, point 3 we just did, which is show creators are teabagging feminists and press.
Yeah. You guys are quiet. Speak up. I'm sorry. Me and HC are like monopolizing the airwaves here.
No, it's fine. You guys are saying everything I was thinking. I think I said, made a good few good points. There is something that I think that I find interesting about what you're talking about that's related to other shows. Sometimes I think that there are writers that create shows and they have figured out the formula for writing what they want to while simultaneously appearing to pander to social justice warrior types and the press. And they do it, and it's actually pretty smart. So they basically make it look on the surface like they're offering up all the diversity and stuff that these people are usually looking for, and they may even they may even pay lip service to the press in interviews. But then when they tell their story, they do what they really want to do. And this is an example of that. Or I haven't watched that much of it, like Steven Universe is the same way. Like you see it and it looks like, oh, look at all these different body types and all these different women characters and stuff, and there's all this stuff of what appears to be stuff about sexuality, but the show does what it wants to do. And they're basically paying lip service to these children that tend to complain about identity politics. And I think that it's possible that this show is doing the same thing, where they're basically on the surface and in interviews they're saying they're doing one thing, but if you're paying attention and you have a frontal lobe, you can see that there's other stuff going on, and that the I don't know, that's something that I was just thinking about. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I think our high priests of this sort of traditionalist gender fundamentalism, because they have to buy into it so hard, they lose a lot of their intelligence. So it's it's not even that they're stupid. It's like they're deliberately stupid because their money depends on it, and it's funny. It's funny because friends, you can legitimately laugh at morons who are morons because of choice. You can laugh at trans morons. Yeah, you can laugh at them because they have the capability. Anybody with a reasonable human level of intelligence has the capability of challenging this gender lens and seeing beyond it. But they choose not to. And they choose not to probably because their money depends on it, probably because they're too frickin' lazy. I mean, it's just you know what? You want to be athletic, you go out and you run a block. You want to really challenge gender norms? You do the work.
Yeah.
You make the effort. And this is it. They just don't want to make the effort, and it makes them stupid. And it's a willful stupidity that they cannot see that they're being teabagged. And because it's a willful stupidity, because it's like you can see the balls bouncing in their face, and they're like, no, it smells like petunias. You can laugh. You can laugh.
Yeah, you can laugh at it. It takes a while to learn to laugh at it because for a while, the red mist sometimes still descends, and you kind of, for me, that I still sometimes read things that are so stupid they actually make me really mad, and then I just go away and I find a way to laugh about it.
Is there anything left to say?
We can go on to the next point,
Sure. What's the next
which
point?
was the next point was the hug at the end and Joe's being
Aw.
suicidal.
That was so
I just-
awesome.
Oh God, that was the hug that saved Joe's life.
Yeah, that was really lovely, and I was really worried in this episode they'd have Joe ruin their relationship forever, and it didn't happen, and instead it was something glorious in contemplation, although went a bit haywire at the end when I
Well,
don't
actually,
know what.
no. Actually, it makes perfect sense what happened.
It
And
did.
Joe was doing exactly what Gordon told him to do.
Yeah,
I know people
I just
will.
don't know why Gordon went, "Oh, son of a bitch," at the
Well,
end.
because he
when
doesn't realize that Joe did exactly what he asked him to do. Remember,
Okay.
Gordon gave him that disc, and he said, "Try to make it right with Sarah." Well,
Yeah.
Joe knows that giving it to West Group is not only, you really think that Joe's going to walk into West Group and be like, "Hi, here's a floppy disk that will fix your problems,"
Yeah,
and they're going to
that
be
would
just
be
like,
ridiculous.
"Okay, yeah, put it in." No, that's not going to happen. First of all, and second of all, Sarah doesn't care. Not only that, West Group has skewered Jacob. They've made him
Yeah.
a scapegoat. So the only two people who Joe could possibly be trying to make right with at West Group are no longer at West Group. So what's the point of even trying? But what Sarah said throughout the first entire second season is go to California and make a business. And that's what he did. That's what Sarah
Yeah.
was constantly telling him to do. And Gordon said, try to make it right with Sarah. And Joe made the obvious conclusion, well, maybe I should do what she was constantly telling me to do. And I'll do that. And maybe she'll passively see that I've done what she's told me to do.
Also note the change in personality after Joe gets that program, goes and sells it, and then he picks up the phone and watch him as he's talking on the phone. Look at how excited he is.
Yeah.
When you see Joe talking on the phone again, and you haven't seen that
It's
excitement in
almost
a while.
season one, Joe.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
Well, but
And
the thing
it
is that he says we have such an opportunity, Gordon.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to.
We have such an opportunity. I want to talk to you. We can do this. And oh God, if only he'd gone and done it and said, you know what, screw this. I'm not working for Mutiny.
Yeah,
Well, but his wife was extorting him with their entire family and marriage, so he really didn't have a
He
choice.
didn't have a choice. And he
He could have
couldn't
dropped
tell.
everything. He really could have dropped everything and said, you can have it all.
No,
at
but
this
you
point.
can't, like, Gordon is his, at this point in time, Gordon is his daughter's life. They don't have any
Oh.
connection left with their mother, it looks like.
Oh.
Or it's very, very formal.
Yeah,
And-
it is actually.
And he can't leave them. He literally cannot leave them, and Donna knows that. So she's just twisting the knife to get him to do whatever she wants, which is basically what Cameron wants. And so, I mean, yeah, he could explain that to Joe. Joe hung up when Gordon said, "I'm working for Mutiny," before he could
It was almost a
explain.
panicked way, didn't it? It was almost a panicked hang-up, wasn't it?
Well,
Just
it
slammed
was-
the phone down.
Yeah, he was pissed. He was pissed or panicked or something, but he was really upset.
Wasn't it also Cameron that suggested in the first place, a few episodes back, to Donna that she's saddled with children by her husband? That it never crossed anyone's mind before that she was, somehow put upon until Cameron said it, and now she's running with that idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, maybe it might have been that she constantly harped on the fact that she didn't come there to look after children. Maybe she is looking to get away from looking after children. Because she constantly goes on about what a child her husband is, or she has made intimations that she thinks her husband acts like a child.
And which season was it where Donna said that, would I be a terrible mother if I just lock myself in here and don't tell the girls?
Yeah, that was this season.
That's the season.
Yeah.
You said, and Gordon said, yes, you would. Go and say goodnight. Which is an odd moment, but I kind of laughed when I saw that.
Well, Gordon's putting his
you
kids
would.
first.
Yeah.
Period. And that's what's interesting about it. You look at the difference between Gordon in this season and Donna in the first season. She's playing the put upon, working mother who makes Gordon's life possible, and then Gordon plays that role in the second season, and the way she treats him, she treats like her entire family as a nuisance, and
Yeah.
it's like. It wasn't the same. You know, Gordon tried to be with his kids. He was under a gun and dealing with a lot of stress, but he did try. And not just that, but he was probably dealing with some latent mental health and physical issues.
Yeah. And also, every time things kind of screwed up, like when he got his friend to pick up his kids and the principal tried to call the police, he did deal with it. He didn't actually just let the police come or anything. He did actually deal with problems as they came up. So saying that he's a bad dad is kind of
no,
crappy.
he's not a bad dad. He's putting his kids first, even in going to work with Mutiny. Donna has extorted him. She's kidnapping him basically. It's almost like, and here let's get into the mythology that's going on here, because it's really interesting. Like you were saying, you put in a clue, and we were talking. Me and Anthony talk about the show religiously, so we have lots of theories. But they use in the final 3 episodes, looking at the mythology. The final 3 episode is called Limbo, and Limbo is the place just outside of Hell where you go if you're not quite, I guess, bad enough to go to Hell.
Basically means you're unbaptized. You're a good person, but you're not baptized, and you can't go to heaven.
Yeah, so you end up in limbo, and the way you get out of limbo is, what was it, the tabula rasa, or the way you get out of purgatory?
The way you get out of limbo is, I think, by being visited, or something happens to shatter the illusion. Which is, I think, the Kali reference, because Kali was supposed to be the shatter of illusions in Hindu mythology, but something has to shatter the illusion that you're not really in heaven. And tabula rasa was a blank slate. Okay, in purgatory, you ascend sort of levels where you sort of discard the 7 deadly sins, where they say you become a blank slate as you go up and up and up it. You discard your venal sins, the 7 deadly sins you discarded as you ascended. So yeah, you're right. They have deliberately flown in these metaphors, the very religious ones.
Yeah, the tabula rasa, limbo, purgatory, Kali, and Kali is not just the name of the Hindu goddess of destruction and possibly also protection. It's also the name of a demon.
Yeah, the Lord of all evil.
The Lord of all evil. So essentially,
yeah.
That's a really interesting situation, because Kali is actually a consort of Shiva, and Kali is the dark side of Shakti, and Shiva is the destroyer by bringing knowledge, and he's a destroyer to create, while Kali is seen as also destroyer of ignorance, but she's a more chaotic destroyer. And so in fact, the curious bit is a lot of times you see her portrayed with her tongue out standing on top of Shiva, and that is because he actually lays himself down, because she went on a rampage to kill all these demons, and she actually started hurting innocent people. And Shiva laid himself down, and by stepping on him, she recognized the folly of her outrage, and she sticks out her tongue in embarrassment, and it's a whole thing that's really, really dear to me, actually.
Which is interesting, because Tom was, I think, one who sort of laid down in this.
Yeah, and sort of said, no more, I'm going to leave to show you how
insane you've become, basically.
Yeah, and just how tyrannical and despotic and detached and driven to support something not worth saving. You could have just walked away and started again, and no, you just react to things without thinking in the most destructive way possible.
But what's interesting is that there's that reference to demons, to hell, which I think actually Mutiny itself, the name Mutiny, is also a reference to hell. Because why was hell created? Because someone mutinied.
Yeah.
And was fallen. And that's interesting, because it's like if we take those this exploration, literally, then Kali broke Joe's illusion that he was in heaven with Sarah. She broke that illusion, and then he's essentially went into hell and came back out, and the tabula rasa program allowed him to ascend to heaven, which is almost metaphorically, it's like he is in that building very high up looking down.
And he got what he was told to do at the start, go to California and build his business, and that's his heaven. He's finally escaped and finally made it to the West Coast.
Yeah.
Now
Finally
if it gets a new season, if we get a new season, let's see how he ends up entwined with these people again.
But what's interesting is that I also talked about the temptations, because there's more of the mythology, the religious mythology in iconography, and it's interesting in terms of its mythology and what it says about us psychologically. There are 3 temptations of these savior figures in mythology, Buddha and Christ. The first temptation is, well, actually I'm not going to do them in order, but one temptation is a temptation of the flesh, and then another temptation is the temptation of the kingdom, and then the third temptation is the temptation of doubt. And Joe goes through all 3. He starts, the temptation of the flesh is when Cameron goes to him and tries to seduce him, and then he says no sale, and which is actually, you know what, that just reminded me of something that was really ridiculous. One of the stupid things that people said, like, one of the articles, this article was on Vox, so it's another one of the people who are being sort of teabagged by this show. And this is a quote from that article: Halt and Catch Fire review gender. But what's ultimately at the bottom of his desire, and he barely wants to acknowledge to himself, is a desire to be back with Cameron, even if not romantically. And she won't come to him if she won't come to the arrangement willingly, then he'll just have to purchase her company and her with it. The only problem with that is that Joe is the one who scuppered the deal for Mutiny to be purchased by West Group, because Jacob was suggesting that he would take away their creative freedom. And Joe was also the one who said no to Cameron in the seduction scene. He was the one who pushed her away.
Well,
and this is the bullshit that the press are like. They don't even see what they're saying in the. They don't even seem to watch the show.
I think it's because a lot of them get press cuts. They get sort of snippets of the vital bits of the show and write a review based on that, and it leaves bits out. Some of them get that. They get press packages. They get part of the show, sort of the key moments. So sometimes you get reviews that just seem to be baffling, and yeah, that's why. Well,
I think that's what's happening, is that they just are taking off on what the creators say and some excerpts of the show. They're not actually watching the show, because if this person had watched the show, they would know that it would things that happen in the show that directly contradict what they're saying. But the thing is that, well, directly.
I was going to say that the one thing I would say in defense of Jacob Wheeler is what he said about restricting their creative freedom to make games is historically accurate. They are going to be destroyed by Nintendo in a few months.
Yeah, he was completely right.
Yeah, but, and that to me only solidified that this guy knows what he's doing. I didn't get a vibe of he's a creepy, destructive businessman. I got a vibe of
he knows what he's doing.
And he should be running something like this. They need someone like that to tell them, okay, your games are going to get wiped out. Focus on your community service. And if you want to make games, Nintendo is looking for people to port and even make games for them in the West. They might like an adventure game for consoles.
Yeah.
And your game might be a great console game, Cameron.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, that's the thing, is that it was just these uncompromising people. What I want to get at back to the mythology is Joe refused Cameron, and then he also refused Jacob when Jacob offered him the ability to control Mutiny's future, to take away their autonomy to benefit them. And that's the temptation of the kingdom. The Christ and Buddha were given the option to become earthly lords in which they could save everyone, and they said no. People have autonomy. They should have autonomy. I wish the church had actually looked at that, but whatever. So they said they refused to take away people's autonomy in the process of saving them. And then the final temptation is doubt. And in Halt and Catch Fire, the temptation of doubt is nobody trusts Joe. Nobody believes him when he is trustworthy. And how he resolves that, I think, is really interesting. He stops caring what people think about him. That's what I think. That's where I think he goes. He stops caring. That BC guy thinks he's a sociopath. Well, if that's what he wants, Joe gives that to him.
I still think it was a great sales pitch.
Oh, it was a great sales pitch, but that's what the VC wanted to see in Joe, and that's what Joe provided him. That's what Joe showed him. We should probably wrap this up. It's getting really late, eh? For Mike.
Yeah, we had more stuff, but yeah, this stuff could go forever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the last thing I wanted to say, just some positive stuff. The hug was really great. I think that the tension that was created between Gordon and Joe with the phone call and stuff, it didn't really feel like genuine ways in which men communicate. I think it was done in a certain way to feel like drama. And what I mean is not necessarily that specific phone call, but earlier in the episode when they were talking. One of the things that I think that maybe people don't notice is it seems that the person who is closest to Joe that is not like a love interest is Gordon. That's basically his best friend. And
Gordon is closer than his love interest.
Yeah, what I'm saying, like, if we're going to treat them as separate sort of things, because when Joe gets attached to a love interest, he really goes all in, right? Like Sarah, he went all in.
Balls deep.
Yeah, he goes balls deep, right? But when everything hits the fan or whatever, things go poorly. Even if Joe and Gordon, like, they fight, they argue, they bicker, whatever, they get shit done, and they recognize that they have a bond, right? And it's strong. And I think that because of that, I think it would make sense if I don't know. I guess we can go in. This could like make the show longer, but I think that Gordon doesn't feel as though for whatever reason that he can like open up to people. Or I mean Gordon. That's why he doesn't tell a lot of people about his issues, like what he's going through in the show. But I don't believe that makes a lot of sense. I think that men, when they are going through problems, when they're experiencing personal issues in their life, especially if it's going on with their marriage or with their kids, they reach out to other men. They tell them over a beer or whatever, even if they only see them for a little while. It seemed as though they did on this show, especially in the last episode. There were a couple of weird things that I've seen in television and movies that always annoyed me. Have you ever seen, like, in a movie or a TV show where characters meet somewhere, like somebody drives out to somebody's house, or they meet at like a restaurant, or they meet at a cafe, and it seems as though they go all that distance and they only talk to that person for like not even 5 minutes. And you wonder, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's usually done in the story to pass along a message really quickly. But it doesn't make a lot of sense realistically, because typically, people would stick around. So, like, for example, in the show, Joe goes to Gordon's place to drop off that little gift, and they don't talk anymore.
Well, can I interject here, Brian?
Yeah.
That makes sense, because at that point in time, Joe was getting ready to kill himself.
Well, yeah, I guess that's right. But then wouldn't there also be like a need to reach out or like get to know what like when?
No, because I think that one of the problems, like, Joe was literally, guys, people who were watching this show, it almost ends with Joe offing himself. It almost goes there. One of the things with the suicide is he probably didn't want to hang around Gordon too much because he didn't want to get interfered with. That's probably, and he was probably giving off some of that vibe of, I don't really want to talk right now, Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, you could see that Gordon was trying to invite him to converse more. Did you see that? And
Yep.
he was he was shutting it down every time. And I think this is explained by the fact that Joe was preparing himself for suicide, and he did not want Gordon to interfere with his plans. It was really important it's so sad. Okay, can I just describe the scene because people don't know what the scene is. Joe is obviously suicidal. There's a scene where he's in traffic. He takes his hand off the wheel of a car that isn't power steering. It's actually, he could have died right then. And he, for several seconds until someone honks at him, he's just letting go. Like he's practicing a kill himself. He's suicidal after he's signed the divorce papers. And there's a scene where he goes to Gordon, and he has kept this PROM chip. I don't know if PROM chip that is from the computer that they reverse engineered in the first season. He's kept it for several years. And he gives it to Gordon, and he tells him that this chip has got him through some hard times. And this is another thing that tells you that Joe is not sociopathic. He takes mementos of the people he's with, and they comfort him. And he gives this chip to Gordon. And Gordon's trying to get him to talk, to try to figure out what's wrong. And Joe is cutting down every attempt at Gordon talking to him. And it's just, this scene is just,
Hard to watch.
Yeah, it's hard to watch. It's heartrending. Anyway, that's what I think was happening in that scene, Brian, is Joe is simply shutting Gordon down so he doesn't have to. First of all, he doesn't have to. Joe, throughout this entire first season, is sort of big on not burdening Gordon with his problems. And I think Gordon is a little similar. They care about each other, but they just don't want to burden people with their problems, particularly each other. And because the whole thing where Joe doesn't get his payout for the work that he did on the Cardi PC, and he doesn't tell Gordon because he just doesn't want to burden Gordon. And I think Joe was aware that Gordon was sick at that time. So I think that explains it, and Joe was shutting down Gordon's attempt to talk to him because I think he didn't want to reveal too much about his plans or his situation because he was preparing himself to kill himself.
Those are good points. I hadn't considered. And well, the last thing I wanted to say before because it's like we've gone 2 hours, just about, is it was the comment about how I don't know if we got into it too much, but how ideology ruins creativity, and how it gets in the way. Like your worldview can keep you from taking chances or trying to, because normally, like when people write stories, if they're really good at it, they're gonna try to put themselves in the shoes of people who don't think anything like them, and try to tell, maybe show real and create a really good, compelling character, even without having walked a mile in their shoes. Does that make sense? And I think that can. We don't know if this is what's going on in this case, because there is a lot of evidence that shows that it's possible that this is like a big elaborate social experiment or a troll, potentially, which is what makes it so interesting and compelling. But I think that it still opens up that dialogue where you have, if a person has a worldview, it can get in the way. It will get in the way of them creating, narratives, because they're so focused on getting that worldview in there, and they'll make assumptions about certain kinds of characters or ideas or world building concepts because it conflicts with their narrative, and it becomes easier to use, well, for lack of a better term, labels, assumptions that they're making without actually trying to do it in a really interesting and compelling way.
Okay, I can say this succinctly. Moral porn, which is what you're talking about, gets in the way of narrative for exactly the same reason regular old porn does. Because it's not about the narrative. The payoff is ejaculating your righteousness all over the fucking world, whether or not they want it or not.
And once you've climaxed, you lose interest and you don't even remember the story.
So it's like with moral porn, the narrative is just there to deliver the
And-
climax. That's it, and that's what makes it suck.
And you also have to wonder why they bothered with the narrative in the first place if all you can see is the porn.
Yeah, well, it's like, and nobody, it makes the narrative impossible for anybody to enjoy, because all it serves is to get to that moral porn climax, and if you're not into that particular version or brand of moral porn, it's not going to do it for you.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. That is definitely a very honey badgerish way to look at it.
Also, one final point before I wanted to leave off is that a lot of people this season really like the character of Boz. Do you think he was a highlight of this season?
Both seasons, I think. Was my favorite character first season and stayed pretty awesome second, except for his defaulting to Cameron for everything and letting her be the,
Yeah, but he still defended Joe. He was the only character that really defended Joe aside from Gordon.
Yeah. I just really started to enjoy Boz in this season and kind of wish they'd found a way to have him in the show without him going back to Mutiny. That would have been really nice.
Okay, take us out, Brian.
All right. Yeah, Boz was a great character too. So,
I guess I could do a shill.
Yeah.
There is something to shill. We do have a fundraiser to send Karen to the airplay.
Yeah, we want to send Karen to airplay to wreck.
Yeah. And potentially seduce Milo.
So, yeah, what do you guys...
She's going to infiltrate airplay cleverly disguised as a twink named Kevin Strong.
Oh, yes. We should be careful how we use the word infiltrate. It might bite us in the ass again.
Yeah, well, the fundraiser is titled Badgers Plan to Infiltrate Airplay Disguised as Badgers, so,
Oh.
Also, does she know that if she's going to infiltrate as a twink named Kevin Strong, she has to shave, like, her whole body?
And preferably, like, black up if she's going to go for Milo.
Oh. Oh. Well, we don't know if that.
Yeah. No.
Okay, but we have a hashtag courtesy of Hyper Chicken called Get Karen to Milo. I don't know what the patrons are doing with that right now. Probably nothing. But anyway, yeah, if you're interested in seeing some Badger action at Airplay, please do point your browsers to www.feedthebadger.com. And if you've wanted to donate one time, this would be the time. Well, I mean, there's multiple times, but this is a good time. This is a really good one. So do it. Are you going to do it? Yeah.
I already have, so...
Yeah. Well, HC already has, so there you go.
Yeah.
Might be cool like HC, do it.
Yeah. Are you going to do it? Do it. Do it.
Just do it!
They do give you good stuff. There is actually rewards for donating, so... Yeah. Look at them and see if you find one you like and donate.
Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday you said tomorrow. Just do it.
Yeah, just
Tomorrow is
end
when
it.
the sun will come up.
Yeah.
All right, well, I guess that's it, right? We're done.
Yeah, this is like the most lame ending ever. Like, it doesn't have any energy. It's just like we sort of slop towards the ending.
Nothing. We're halting, but nothing caught fire.
Yeah. Come on, let's have some fire, people.
Fire is not rising.
The fire is not rising. You're just sort of inching towards the finish line, just like slowly.
I'm trying to find a way to make it more interesting, but I can't think of anything. You use the word moral porn, and I don't know where you go from there. So all we can do really is just kind of
slide on our self-righteous.
Slide on out of there.
I think it's called the moral money shot.
Yes, that's where we are.
Followed by reaching for the moral baby wipes.
Well, if you liked it, please consider doing the things that Allison was suggesting before.
Ask questions. Ask questions.
Yes, ask questions.
What did you guys think of *Halt and Catch Fire*? Are you going to watch it? Will you help me take over Tumblr? I want to take over I want to take over Tumblr. This is Australia, friends. This is the isolated but large region. *Halt and Catch Fire* is isolated, but it's large. Well, relatively large. We could take it over, and we could launch a complete invasion of Tumblr from this.
More like Papua New Guinea, but you see what she's saying.
Yeah, it's more like Papua New Guinea, but it's somewhat isolated. It's large enough. We can amass our forces, and we can be relatively well defended because of the isolation, and we could destroy. Fucking burn Tumblr to the ground.
Wow. That
I'll
sounds...
see you in Papua New Guinea. Last one in the bag.
All right, well, I guess this is goodbye and good luck.